Mass Effect 5 has only one chance at redemption after the terrible Mass Effect Andromeda. To understand what it needs to fix, we are going all the way back to the release of the first Mass Effect to see why the original trilogy became a gaming classic. Can you believe that if someone found themselves a partner like Liara after Mass Effect launched, or even better, like Tali, their kid is already 19 years old? Sometimes in life, especially in the game industry, one team starts a project and another finishes it. That's been the case with many franchises that saw a huge drop in quality over the years, often due to decisions driven by putting equality above talent and experience. I consider Mass Effect to be one of these series. With this fifth installment of this epic trilogy approaching fast, plus a TV series that's already stirring controversy, and another game from the Mass Effect team, it's worth going back to 2007 to see what mistakes the developers of the new entry should avoid. Let's get into it. My first encounter with Mass Effect was the third game, an incredible journey about fighting the mythical Reapers. I was really surprised when I learned that Mass Effect 3 is considered one of the worst rated entries in the trilogy. Now, having played the first two parts, I understand why. And looking at Mass Effect 3 with hindsight, I can also see certain passions that led to that. But before we start complaining, let's talk about what worked so well in the earlier games. There will be spoilers from the whole trilogy, so don't say I didn't warn ya. The first Mass Effect genuinely makes you wonder what kind of talentless hacks are working in the game industry today. As a player, you become more and more engaged at every stage, not just in the fate of the world, but also in the lives of individual characters you gradually build relationships with, because each of them has a name, personality, and something meaningful to say. Tali is shy, awkward, and completely different from, let's say, Vrex, and every race is really unique. I once watched a podcast with a narrative designer from Cyberpunk 2077 and he talked about storytelling philosophy. He mentioned Freytag's pyramid, an essential concept for anyone who wants to create memorable stories. It consists of 5 elements: exposition, rising action, climax, crisis, and resolution. The key is to apply this structure both to the main story and to smaller subplots. This builds up the finale while keeping player engaged. Now let's apply that to Mass Effect. We start with exposition, where Commander Shepard, captain of the most advanced ship in the galaxy, the Normandy. While trying to save humanity, we encounter a mysterious beacon that shows us a vision. This introduces us to the rules of the world. Some games overdo this and turn it into a boring tutorial with scripted instructions. Assassin's Creed 3 right away comes to mind. The first 40 minutes of the game are constant mini tutorials broken up by cutscenes. I wouldn't survive playing that again. Back to the pyramid. Then we get the inciting incident. Saren's betrayal is revealed and Shepard becomes a Spectre. The motivation here is that the Council doesn't fully believe us, but we know the truth and must prove it. There's a subtle theme of racism. Humans are less advanced than other species, so Shepard is driven to prove not only that Saren is a threat, but also that the humanity deserves respect. This already lays the groundwork for future choices. Then we learn that Saren is just a pawn and the real threat is the Reapers, a mythical race that has been wiping out civilizations for ages. Even knowing the story from Mass Effect 3, I still got chills at this moment. The idea that no matter how advanced you are, something even more advanced wants to destroy you is fascinating, especially if you saw a show Pluribus or you're familiar with concepts like the Dark Forest theory. You can tell this game was designed as a trilogy from the start because each part builds up the main antagonist through direct danger. In this case it was Sovereign. Then comes the crisis, the final battle for the Citadel, where we make key decisions that shape the future of the galaxy. For example, deciding the fate of the Council, who kept getting in our way the entire game. These decisions carry over into future entries. Honestly, very few games offer meaningful moral choices on this scale. And I don't just mean story-defining choices, even small things like helping a family build a house in Red Dead Redemption 2 and watching it progress in real time make the world feel alive. Finally, the resolution, where we face the main enemy and see whether Shepard is strong enough to defeat him. Main enemy in quotes, because Mass Effect had the guts to end the first game on a cliffhanger without fully revealing the Reapers, making us wait 5 years. And that's exactly what defines a good story. Multiple Freitag pyramids, big and small, all working together to increase player engagement. You feel like your decisions matter, like humanity's fate depends on you. But Mass Effect wasn't just strong narratively. It introduced new races and tackled difficult themes. We meet the Krogan, Turians and Quarians, stories that reflect real-world issues like racism and xenophobia. I enjoyed uncovering these themes, whether subtle or direct, like confronting Ashley's prejudice and reminding her who is in command. Or even kinda agreeing with her that caution around aliens might be justified based on how Council treats humans. The game gives you that freedom. My Shepard chose to trust aliens, which led to a friendship with Garrus in Mass Effect 3. Modern audiences often point to the Asari as proof of that. Woke themes have always been in games. After playing Mass Effect 1, I can say that's nonsense. The Asari has a unique lore. Their children are always female. Most of the time they choose male partners, yet also they bond with other Asari, even though having a child with another Asari is frowned upon because it doesn't advance the species. And now compare that to a push-ups in Veilguard because you misgendered someone.
So when one of us screws up and we know we've screwed up, we do a quick 10 to put it right. Pulling above.
History of Asari is complex and is much deeper than a trend of making LGBT character only to tick a box in Excel spreadsheet, like the Microsoft does, for example. We also make a lot of amazing moral choices that will pay off only in second or third part. As Shepard, we can take part in a homosexual relationships. Do you know how I found out about it? I did it while checking if first two parts of Mass Effect are woke. I would never even see it in a game because I'm not interested in things like that, but a person who expects that from their game also will have a chance to play their role. I really respect those kind of decisions when developing a game because it shows that the creators of it want you to really live the story and not live story of someone who has to be reminded at every single step that those kind of things exist, as they did it in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, because I still think that part with Musa and romance with Jan Capon were added to the game only because Playon threw some money to Warhorse Studios and studio had to fulfill their expectations. Those fragments were written so badly that even before the heart appeared on the screen, I already knew that the author was writing this story exactly with the thought of this final scene that we are going to. And now compare these dialogues to the story of Mass Effect 1. That makes me appreciate the old school of game dev even more. And then there is one thing that only one country in the world experienced. Because in Polish version, Rex was turned into the most foul-mouthed Krogan ever.
Świadkowie widzieli, jak groziłeś pięści. Trzymaj się z daleka od niego.
Spierdalaj.
I was disappointed to find out that that was actually a translation error, later toned down. If you think about it, Mass Effect 2 is actually a game about nothing. A filler in the Mass Effect story that doesn't add so much. Throughout the entire game we gather a crew and in the end someone kidnaps them. Then we rescue them. The end. Boring, right? The game should have action, intrigue, something more. Well, not exactly, because each of those companion stories is interesting enough to push us through the narrative on its own. For me, the Collectors, the main antagonist, took a back seat. I was more interested in the missions related to gathering the crew. And besides gathering them, we also had the chance to deepen relationships through loyalty missions for each character. Mass Effect 2 tricks the player by emotionally engaging them with each character only to test it in the final battle. From the first description, it might seem like this part is boring, but thanks to creating characters with their own personalities, you actually want to learn their future stories, no matter if they're an enemy or a friend. Overall, in this part I realized how much I'm amazed by character diversity, where each one has their own personality and evokes separate likes and dislikes, except Jacob and James. They were kinda poorly written. On top of that, we get a calm build-up of important storylines like the Geth and the Krogan, making decisions about their future. In today's world that would be unthinkable, because what if viewer loses interest and then they give a bad rating to the game and then we are not able to release a sequel? To sum it up, Mass Effect 2 focuses on relationships. Let's say that part 2 walked so that part 3 could run. But did it really? Alright, I have to admit something. Mechanics and gameplay are important to me in games, but I'm the type of person for whom the most important thing is the story being told. That's why only in the final mission of Mass Effect 3 I realized that weapons can be upgraded. Through the entire game I was running around with that poor Maddock on level 1 or 2, I don't remember, and with Shepard's basic armor because it looks the best, and I was thinking to myself, oh, this game is pretty difficult. Despite that, I played the trilogy one game after another, and by the end of the second part I was already tired of the repetitive mechanics, which boiled down to constant shooting, especially since they removed puzzles from the third part. So if you also like good storytelling in games and you enjoy this material, you can leave a like. Thanks a lot. It's hard to hate all Mass Effect 3. It has really great audiovisual presentation and it closes the entire story of Shepard that we've been following for years. It's a bit like putting together a full dish. You already have all the threads and relationships created in the previous parts, now you just have to combine them into one coherent story. All you have to do is just finish what others started and don't ruin it. But there were also topics it decided to add on its own, like for example our gay pilot who left his husband back on Earth. It's a thread that very clearly showed a change in the way games are being written. It could have been told in 10 different ways, but the game chose direct exposition in dialogue. Whether due to lack of initial talent or pressure to release the game, some of Shepard's lines felt forced, without any choice from the player, and the ending is already famous for the hate from the players. Honestly, during my playthrough I shot that little brat and it turned out that's also some kind of choice, so I was forced to reload a save. It turns out that so many people were doing and recording that devs got mad and added it as a revenge. Mass Effect 3 was a triumph of simplification, correctness and rush, flattening the finale of the trilogy into an elevated pastiche of a space opera. It made me a bit sad, but only Andromeda showed what the real cause of such an ending was. I wouldn't even touch Mass Effect Andromeda with a stick, because this game represents everything I bounce off in games. We already have an established universe with a new story, but Andromeda decided to play its own way because they know better than the original creators. Instead of an interesting main plot, we supposedly get an open world with somewhat interesting exploration. That would still be acceptable, but when I dug deeper, it turned out that relationships with side characters also degraded compared to previous parts, as if every new companion character was Cortez, so basically that driver from Mass Effect 3. And it's also worth not forgetting about the terrible character models and animations. Ignoring the fact that they often behaved as if they were animated by a student, at the time of the release of the fourth Mass Effect, it was also a period when women in games were deliberately made uglier to not get attacked by crazy feminists for unrealistic beauty standards. So we were getting a male face that looked fairly normal and a female face that looked like this. I don't want to suggest anything, but as a male character we get this romance option, and as a female character we get this one. And of course, the second one is a deeply religious person, which is why she was written as a lesbian. And that's exactly what I expected from this part when I first heard the conversation with Cortez. And that's the most annoying thing, that even if you see Parn and even if you criticize it, there will be always these assholes from modern audience that will say, it's nothing bad, you're just homophobic, racist, and then a game turns out to be a flop. Even in Cyberpunk 2077, by taking away the possibility of a relationship with Judy, the game gives you the option of a romance with Panam. If it was written by the creators of Andromeda, then as male V we would probably only have a romance option with Wakako Okada. I mean, if you like it, I guess it's fine, but it doesn't matter anyway, because apparently dialogue options have no consequences for our character. So basically they took two best things about Mass Effect series. Firstly, relationships, secondly, moral choices, and they threw them into the trash. The only positive I'm able to see in this game is that there's also the option to play with Matok. We still don't know much about Mass Effect 2, but it's not looking good. More than half of the team working on the game has been let go from the studio, and it's only people who worked on the previous part, so you can safely assume that there is practically no one left who worked on the original trilogy. Taking into account the current state of developers working in this type of companies, they need strong leadership that will guide them step by step, otherwise they will write another story that is self-therapy instead of a hit for years. The new direction at EA Games, according to which studios with worse results are shut down, also doesn't help. It creates huge stress which can reflect on the final quality of the game, but of course players don't care about that, and nobody will buy a product just because the dev had a hard time. On the other hand, we also have competition in the form of the game Exodus, that is being created by the original developers of Mass Effect Trilogy, and it's supposed to be a spiritual successor to it, with moral choices affecting the story. You could call it stealing the brand, but I prefer to call it the healthy competition. We had hard times where you had to write good stories, then came easy times where it was enough to write for the modern audience, and now hard times are coming back where you again have to put in effort to attract the player with your game. That's why I wish BioWare all the best, and I hope that after the first hours of Mass Effect 5 I will feel the same as I did after a few hours of the first game in its series. Especially since a message recently came out from Amazon that the script for the new series set in Mass Effect universe is supposed to be rewritten so that it also appeals to people who don't play video games. Also reportedly it was debunked, but I don't believe it. I'm very sorry, but did some Krogan sit on your face over there at Amazon? I guarantee you that if, while making the series, you make sure that players and fans of the trilogy are satisfied, then this story will appeal to everyone interested. But if you'll decide to abandon loyal fans in favor of a few undecided subscribers, then I guarantee you that the first season of Mass Effect will be the last. If a show is for everyone, it is for no one. I miss the times where every show had its own style, its own identity, and not when they are just copies of the same template just to reach the widest possible audience. From the perspective of a new fan, I see a clear de-evolution as the series progressed. The early Mass Effect games offered a world where each race had specific roles and histories, and difficult topics were part of the narrative, not empty pathos. In Mass Effect 3 there are still important messages, but they sound like a broken record. There are pompous phrases that are clearly spoken only to elevate the tone of the scene. Moments that could have been handled better and abandoned in favor of teaching the little player that good is good and evil is evil. To sum up, the beautifully crafted social themes in Mass Effect lost their authenticity. Instead of letting the player experience dilemmas on their own, we got ready-made scenarios where even when being bad, you usually feel good, without the possibility of staying neutral. You could say that BioWare has always been inclusive, but personally I get the impression that in Mass Effect 3, the quality of the story declined, which showed even more in Mass Effect Andromeda, where the developers could no longer rely on the narrative foundations of previous parts. And ironically, for many players this is exactly the proof that woke stopped being something harmless and became the content of the game itself. What Mass Effect 5 will bring we still don't know, but we can be sure of one thing: if the team creating this game doesn't get to work and instead of writing an interesting story focuses again on their own life problems, we will get another flop, which will turn out to be the final end of the BioWare studio, which already didn't have it easy in previous years. And that's it from me. Let me know in the comments what you think about upcoming Mass Effect, and I'll see you in the next video. For now, take care, bye bye.